Sales is the most lucrative skill in the world, period. The problem is most sales advice out there today is outdated, cheesy, and could even keep you from the deals that can make all the difference in your career. This is the No BS Sales School, a podcast for entrepreneurs and salespeople who want to master the skill of selling without all the BS. Welcome to the No BS Sales School podcast. I'm your host, Walker McKay. Today, I want to talk to you about what you need to hold your sales reps accountable for and how to do that. So it's funny, I talk to a lot of people and I ask the owners, the VP of sales, or the managers, what are you holding your people accountable for? And most of the time I get, well, they got to hit that number. There's a certain amount they got to close every month, every quarter. And I said, okay, that's great. And those are rearward-looking metrics. It's back at what's already happened. I said, what forward-looking metrics do you use? And ordinarily, I get this blank stare like, huh? What I tell people is, if you just measure people on results, you're missing about 80% of the picture, especially with a new rep. Here's what I mean by that. I have a newer client. They sell IT services. He's got a couple of reps that are underperforming, shall we say. They're not meeting expectations. We've done assessments on them. They've got the right mindsets. It's just we're not holding them accountable for the right things. And so what I talked to the owner about, what we said was, all right, we got to find out what motivates these people. Number one, what are they trying to get away from? What's one thing, and we need to have this conversation with them, what's one thing they want to make sure doesn't happen by taking this job, by doing well? What are they trying to make sure won't happen, right? What are they getting away from? Because there's always something we're afraid of or getting away from. And I don't want it to be, it's got to be bigger than lose my job. It needs to be what happens if you lose your job. I want them to go there. And I want them to share with you, the manager, the owner, of why it's important, right? That they keep their job or whatever that is, right? And then I want to say to them, tell me something. What does it make sense? What's a reasonable goal? Money in the door, new accounts, whatever that is. So let's say in the next 90 days, what's a reasonable amount that you think you can hit? Now, I want you as the manager to have an idea too, right? And if they say $100,000 and you think, that's kind of a stretch. You've been doing 20. Now you're going to go to 100. How about we say 50, right? Oftentimes we got to manage their expectations down because they'll pull out a number because they think, wow, I'm going to really get excited. I'm going to do 100. Let's have them set the goal at 50. And if they beat the hell out of that, good for them. But let's set it at an attainable level that's not completely unreasonable from what they've been doing in the past. It's an increase, but not unreasonable. And then say, what happens if you make that much money? What happens if you bring that money to the door? What will that allow you to do? What would that keep you from having to do if you brought that money in the door? Let them tell you that. You can dig in a little bit there. What we're trying to find out is their why, right? But besides just the money's green paper, has an emotional tie on us. But what really matters is not the money. It's what that allows them to do or allows them to no longer have to do anymore, right? So once we've determined that, then I want to say, okay, I want to ask them, tell me what kind of behavior do you think you need to do to make that happen? Let's back in. How many accounts would you need to close? Or how much, let's talk about that. Our ideal customer gives us, $10,000 per deal. You need $50,000, so you're going to need 5 closed accounts, right? Sure. Okay, great. How many meetings do you think you'd need to set to be able to get 5 closings? How many meetings do you think you need to set? Maybe the number's 10, 15, maybe 20, whatever their number is. Say that's great, right? Help them manage expectations, though. You know the reality. Maybe it's 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5, 1 out of 10. Whatever it is, I want you to manage their expectations. They say, well, if I need to close 4, I probably need to talk to 10. And you might say, might be closer to 20. Manage their expectations so they can succeed, right? So now, if you got to set 20 meetings in the next, 12 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever time frame you've determined, what kind of behaviors would you need to do to make that happen? What kind of behaviors would you need to do? How many phone calls would you need to make? How many referral a week? How many referrals would you need to ask for a week? How many reach outs over LinkedIn or social media would you need to make per week to make that happen? How many networking events would you need to go to where you find at least 2 people who will take your phone call the next day or agree to a meeting? Break down the behavior in this way and have them create their own plan. Have them create their own plan and say, okay, so you said that you probably need to make 100 phone calls a week. You'd need to go to 2 networking events, which we can talk about another time, but that can be anywhere they go, where you find 2 or more people who are willing to take your call or have a meeting with you. You need to do X number of reach outs on LinkedIn and maybe some number of knock on doors, right? Door knocks. Whatever it is, say, do you think you could do that in a week, every week, right? They have to believe it can be done. If you need to manage their expectations down, they say, I'm going to make 1,000 calls this week. And every week, maybe you need to say, that seems like a lot. You've been making 25. Why don't we go to 100 or 50 to start with? A number they can achieve with additional effort, right? But it doesn't have to be some crazy ass number they can't achieve. The whole thing is I want them to create their plan, their weekly behavior plan. Why is behavior important? Behavior is important because that's what they can control. They can't control who buys. They can't control even who will set a meeting with them, but they can control how many times they push the buttons on the phone. They can't control who answers. They can't control if somebody does call them back. They can control how many network meetings they go to, and they can hang around until they get 2 people who will talk to them. They can control how many outreaches over LinkedIn or whatever they need to make to, again, set up calls, set up meetings. And then I want you to say, do you think you can achieve this? Is this reasonable? Is this something you can commit to? I want them to say yes. And then you say, all right, here's what I want you to do. I want you to email me your behavior, how many dials, how many walk-ins, how many LinkedIn reach outs, how many networking events that you got there and you found at least 2 people who'd be willing to take your call or have a meeting. I want you to send me that list every Friday by 5 o'clock. You think you can do that? Yes. And I'm going to consider if I don't have it in my inbox by 5 o'clock on Friday, for whatever reason, it didn't happen. Are you cool with that? Right? Because I want you to achieve those goals that you want to achieve. I want that to happen. That's super important to me as your manager to help you get what it was you said you wanted to get and to hold you accountable for the behaviors that you said it would take to get to that. Because that's what's important to you, right? That's what's important to you, the salesperson. So I want to give you what you think is important. So then you ask, so let's pretend that a week shows up and you haven't done the behavior you said you're going to do. Maybe you only made 80 calls. Maybe you didn't go to any networking events. Maybe you didn't reach out on LinkedIn at all. How should I handle it the first time that you do that? Right? Ask the question. And they'll probably say, well, you should, make me, you probably should get me to agree to make up for that the following week. And you say, okay, let's do that then. If you don't do those, you have to make up for it the following week. And if you don't send in the email, that means you got to do double the following week. Is that okay with you? Yep. Okay, that's great. How about the second time? How should we handle it if a second week goes by and you either don't send me an email or don't do the behavior you said you're going to do? How should we handle it? Sometimes they'll say, you should fire me. I want you to back them down a little bit and say, well, I get that. I don't want to do that because things happen. But how about this? I give you a warning, put you on probation, if you will, and that this is your last warning, right? Are you okay if we do that? Your last warning. So the second time I give you a warning and you got to make up for the behavior. And what should I do the third time you don't do what you said was important to get what you want to get out of this? And they'll often say, you should fire me. And you say, okay, I don't want to have to do that. Here's the thing. Put all this in writing. Have them put it in writing. Have them sign it and you sign it. The great news is if somebody's not willing to do the behavior to succeed, they're not committed to their own success, they'll fire themselves. You won't have to. There'll be some people that push back on this. You can tell very quickly, right, who's in and who's not. First week, you'll probably get it done, no problem. They'll start to struggle on the second or third week, maybe. Now, what you noticed is I didn't ask them about meetings or closings. See, that's where the coaching part comes in. If they're doing the behavior, you're going to need to coach them on proper mindset. Where are they missing? What's the weak link up here? What's one of their beliefs, or 2 or 3 or 5, that's keeping them from closing business? And if you figure that part out and it's still not working, then it's the time to talk about technique. Technique needs to be the last thing you talk to them about. It's mindset first. They can have the greatest techniques in the whole world, but if they can't make them come out of their mouth, it's worthless. Coaching is one of your responsibilities as the owner, VP of sales manager. It is the thing that's number one, most effective at turning your sales reps around, to helping them grow. However, they have to earn their coaching by doing the behavior. They got to do their part before you do your part. The first part of coaching is getting their numbers, making sure that they're doing the part they said they were going to do. And then you coach them to help them get the meetings if they're not getting those after that behavior. I'm Walker McKay with No BS Sales. You want help doing this? Struggling managing your sales team? Wondering what does a sales process look like and how would that help me? Would it even help me? Happy to have a conversation. 803-917-2817. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to the No BS Sales School podcast. If you're struggling to close deals, then I want to invite you to take my free mini course, where you'll learn the 7 most expensive sales mistakes that will cost you time, money, and credibility. So be sure to click the link in the show notes or go to www.7salesmistakes.com. That's the number 7salesmistakes.com. Thanks again for listening to the No BS Sales School podcast.